Hey everyone! Welcome to The Young and the Restless. I'm Jane, and I'm so excited to have you here. If you love Young and the Restless, then you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Alright, let's dive right in. According to The Young and the Restless spoilers, Sharon Newman may do a backstab, enraging Phyllis Summers in the process. Will Sharon reveal Phyllis's sleazy power play to Nick Newman, blowing up their truce? Fans of The Young and the Restless know that Phyllis and Sharon came to terms after enduring so much misery at the hands of Martin Laurent. Nearly losing their lives in captivity made these opponents see things clearly and discover a way ahead. It may be pushing it to call this a true friendship, but Sharon and Phyllis have clearly built some sort of bond. It may appear false at times, but Phyllis and Sharon have come to respect each other in ways they never had before. Of course, the truce cannot stay forever. There will inevitably be something that undoes all of Sharon and Phyllis's progress, and Phyllis's willingness to hurt Nick could be the spark. In the July 4th episode, Phyllis essentially reaffirmed her allegiance to Kane Ashby, admitting she was willing to betray Nick for him. Kane has ambitious takeover plans for many of Genoa City's leading enterprises, thus Phyllis could play a significant role in the future. Phyllis may pass any tests Kane lays at her and proceed with a backstabbing plot involving Nick, Chancellor, and even Newman Enterprises. However, Sharon may easily figure out what Phyllis is up to and make her own backstabber move beforehand. Sharon might betray her newfound friendship with Phyllis, exposing her as a selfish rat. We have little doubt that Sharon would welcome the opportunity to reconcile the exes, since she remains envious of Nick and Phyllis's relationship. Of course, Sharon's decision to blow things up may backfire. If Sharon damages Phyllis's intentions with Kane and her connection with Nick, you can guarantee she will seek vengeance. Whatever the case, The Young and the Restless spoilers indicate that Sharon may receive information on some stunning Phyllis news sooner or later, so stay tuned to see what she does. Sharon's backstabbing maneuver enrages Phyllis and reveals filthy power play to Nick in a twist that sends shockwaves across Genoa City, tearing ties and exposing the ugly underbelly of relationships based on power, manipulation, and betrayal. The tension had been simmering for weeks, a slow burn of suspicion and hidden threats, but no one anticipated Sharon to make such a daring, calculated move, especially Phyllis, who had thought she was several moves ahead in their twisted game of chess. Sharon had always been perceived as the softer one, the empathic listener, the lady who wore her heart on her sleeve, but beneath that carefully crafted facade sat a strategist with a razor-sharp mind, capable of striking when her opponents least suspected. Nick's wavering loyalty, torn between two women who had shaped so much of his life, Phyllis, the fiery, unpredictable force who thrived on chaos, and Sharon, the seemingly steady presence who had quietly been gathering intel, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, served as the catalyst for this explosive confrontation. Phyllis hadn't relied on Sharon's patience, her willingness to wait for the pieces to fall into place before making her move, and when the time came, it was brutally precise. It all began with a hushed exchange, a seemingly innocent comment made in passing that Nick would have ignored under normal circumstances, but these were not normal circumstances. Sharon had planted the seed of doubt about Phyllis's genuine intentions weeks before and carefully cultivated it, allowing it to develop until it filled Nick's thoughts. Then came the incriminating evidence, receipts for Phyllis's scheming, emails, texts, and even a taped discussion that left little room for interpretation. Phyllis had been playing Nick from the start, using him as a piece in a greater game to gain power, influence, and control of the Newman empire. Sharon had not only uncovered Phyllis's lies, she had deconstructed her entire story, revealing the brutal truth beneath every lovely phrase and caring gesture. The betrayal wounded deep, not only because it was Phyllis, but also because Nick had sincerely believed this time was different, that their connection was genuine. Phyllis, of course, was outraged. When she discovered what Sharon had done, her hatred erupted like a volcano, threatening to sear everything in its path. How dare Sharon interfere? How dare she act like a holy avenger when she was just as cunning and calculating? But, as Sharon calmly pointed out, she had never pretended to be anything else. She hadn't sold Nick a false fantasy or weaved a web of deception to keep him under her grip. Sharon's motives may have been self-serving. After all, she had her own past with Nick and reasons for wanting Phyllis out of the picture, but she wasn't lying to him about them. The hypocrisy was what hurt the most, the understanding that Phyllis had been outmaneuvered by the one person she had misjudged. She had spent years building her image as the ultimate survivor, the woman who always came out on top, but Sharon had just ripped the rug out from under her with a single, devastating blow. Nick's reaction was a flurry of mixed feelings, including rage, hurt, and bewilderment. He had trusted Phyllis and protected her against Sharon's subtle cautions, only to discover that every word of caution was warranted. The shame was nearly as bad as the betrayal itself. He had been duped, and worse, he had fallen for it. The man who took pride in his ability to read people and recognize when he was being manipulated had entirely missed the clues. And now he was standing in the ruins of another failed romance, another illusion dashed. Sharon's role in all of this was ambiguous. Was she the hero who had spared him from further deception, or was she just another participant in the game, taking advantage of his frailty for personal gain? The lines blurred, and Nick found himself questioning everything and everyone. Meanwhile, the consequences spread rapidly through their social groups. Victor, ever the puppeteer, watched in silent delight, but he had to admit Sharon's maneuver was amazing. He had never been Phyllis's biggest admirer, and seeing her knocked down a notch was rewarding, even if it came at his son's expense. Nikki, divided between mother worry and her own tangled history with Phyllis, struggled to find the appropriate words to console Nick, eventually settling on the age-old Newman adage, never trust anyone. However, Summer's reply added another element of drama to the situation. Summer, caught between her mother and the lady who had become like a second mother to her, was upset with Sharon for exposing Phyllis in such a terrible way, even though the proof was indisputable. How could Sharon have done this to their family? How could she dismantle everything without considering the collateral damage? But Sharon, who was always composed, merely reminded Summer that the truth would ultimately come out, better now than later, when the damage would have been far worse. As the dust settled, alliances changed. Billy, who never missed an occasion to stir the pot, couldn't resist questioning Phyllis about her downfall. Even though he was wise enough to walk carefully, Phyllis was still dangerous in defeat, and a cornered animal is always at its most savage. Jack, ever the voice of reason, attempted to negotiate, but even he recognized the situation was beyond repair. The harm was done, and trust was destroyed. Sharon remained unnaturally calm throughout, as if she had predicted the outcome from the start. Maybe she did. Maybe this was her purpose all along, not just to expose Phyllis, but also to remind Nick of who truly understood him and had always been there for him even when he couldn't see it. Phyllis, however, was far from finished. If Sharon thought this was the end, she was quite incorrect. There would be revenge, a countermove, for Phyllis Summers was not one to go down quietly. The conflict was far from done, it had only recently begun. As the players regrouped, the inhabitants of Genoa City braced for the next round of upheaval, for in a town founded on secrets, lies, and power maneuvers, no betrayal remained hidden for long. Sharon may have won the war, but the real question was how much it would cost her in the end. Sharon's backstabber move enrages Phyllis, exposes dirty power play to Nick in a storm of deception that leaves no one unscathed, unraveling the fragile threads of trust that had barely held their tangled relationships together. For weeks, the tension had been a living thing, lurking beneath forced smiles and polite exchanges, a ticking time bomb waiting for the right spark to detonate. Sharon, long underestimated as the gentle, forgiving soul of Genoa City, had finally revealed the steel beneath her warmth, striking with a precision that left Phyllis reeling and Nick questioning everything he thought he knew. The fallout was immediate and brutal, a seismic shift in alliances that sent shockwaves through the Newman family, Summer's loyalties torn down the middle, and Victor watching with that familiar, calculating gleam in his eye, because no one thrived in chaos quite like the Newmans. Phyllis had always prided herself on being the queen of manipulation, the woman who could twist any situation to her advantage, but Sharon's move was something she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just the exposure of her scheming, it was the way Sharon had done it, not in a screaming match or a public showdown, but with cold, undeniable proof delivered straight into Nick's hands. Emails, texts, even a damning voice memo, all of it laid bare Phyllis's true intentions. Nick had never been anything more than a stepping stone in her quest for power. The worst part? She couldn't even deny it. The evidence was irrefutable, and the look on Nick's face, betrayal mixed with disgust, was a knife to the gut. She had played him, yes, but she hadn't counted on Sharon being the one to call her bluff. Nick's reaction was a slow burn of fury and humiliation. He had defended Phyllis, argued with Sharon over her paranoia, only to realize he had been the fool all along. The man who prided himself on seeing through people's games had fallen for one of the oldest tricks in the book, the illusion of love as a weapon. And Sharon? She stood there, not gloating, not even angry, just resigned, as if she had known this moment was inevitable. That stung almost as much as the betrayal itself. Because if Sharon had seen it coming, why hadn't he? Was he that blind, that desperate to believe in Phyllis's redemption arc? The questions gnawed at him, but the answers didn't matter now. The damage was done. Phyllis, never one to take defeat lying down, erupted in a fury that could have leveled Genoa City. How dare Sharon act like some moral authority? As if she hadn't manipulated Nick 100 times over the years, as if she hadn't played her own games with his heart. The hypocrisy was infuriating. But Sharon's calm response cut deeper than any scream could have. The difference is, I never lied to him about who I was. And that was the crux of it. Phyllis had sold Nick a fantasy, a version of herself that didn't exist, while Sharon had always been transparent in her flaws. Now Nick was left to pick up the pieces of yet another shattered relationship, wondering if he'd ever really known either woman at all. Summer, caught in the crossfire, was livid, not just at Phyllis for her lies, but at Sharon for the way she'd exposed them. There had to have been another way, a less nuclear option. But Sharon's quiet reply was chilling. Some lies are too big to soften. And maybe she was right. Maybe the truth, no matter how ugly, was the only way to break the cycle. But that didn't make the aftermath any easier. Nick was distant, Phyllis was plotting her next move, and Sharon? She was already 3 steps ahead, because in Genoa City, the game never really ended, it just evolved. Victor, ever the puppet master, observed it all with grim satisfaction. He'd never trusted Phyllis, had warned Nick time and again, but his son had to learn the hard way. Still, even Victor had to admit, Sharon's play was masterful. Ruthless, yes, but effective. And in their world, effectiveness was what mattered. Nikki, torn between sympathy for Nick and her own complicated history with Phyllis, could only sigh. When will they learn? She murmured, but the answer was obvious, never. Because in Genoa City, love and power were always intertwined, and betrayal was just another move in the game. As for Phyllis? She wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. If Sharon thought this was over, she was sorely mistaken. Revenge was coming, swift, brutal, and utterly unpredictable. Because Phyllis Summers didn't lose. She regrouped. And when she struck back, no one would see it coming. The battle lines were drawn, the players in position. And in a town built on secrets, the next betrayal was already brewing. Sharon may have won this round, but the war was far from over.